But anyway, yeah, just thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, this, if anyone doesn't know who this is Adam Hughes. And yeah, this is just one of those interviews which we'll go through and just ask some questions related to the lawsuits that Adam is in. And if you don't know, he's actually the youngest player out of all the ex-professionals to be involved in this case. So just within the first question I have, just, you've played for a number of clubs, for Bristol, with Exeter Chiefs, as well as the Dragons. Like, when looking back at your career, like, do you regret any of it? Or do you think it's just, really filled with good memories and enjoyment?
I had some absolutely awesome times playing rugby and experiences, met some amazing people, and you look back and playing in front of big crowds and big stadiums is things you'll never forget for the rest of your life. The only regret you ever have really being in the position that I found myself in was just not having that knowledge that you wish you did have to maybe prevent some of the sort of dark times you went through, and also maybe then having that knowledge preventing some of the head injuries as well you also suffer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow. Wow. I mean, like, what would you say was like your favorite stadium to actually play in? Because I know you've played in a ton, but like, what would you say is your favorite stadium besides, the stadium, the teams you were a part of?
Being a Welsh person, it'd be obvious for me to say the Millennium Stadium is just incredible. It really is. But I always used to really enjoy going away and playing in France. Oh. I remember going back to my first ever European game was Toulouse away, back when Toulouse were like the Real Madrid of European rugby. And that was, as a really young sort of 20-year-old, that blew my mind, to be honest. It really did, with the whole sort of police escort into the ground, police horses clapping you off the bus. Even like an hour and a half before the game was just like, whoa, what is this place, And then you got places like Perpignan, which the whole rugby pitch is covered by a cage, and they're throwing things on the pitch, they're banging the cage, and it's, it's quite intimidating. So, France was always great, really good fun. But there's some also lovely places. Pau, again, really nice place, beautiful place to play. I remember played against them in Europe. And it was actually, I was playing 13, and it was Conrad Smith's first game for Poe. Yes. And he came off the bench for like half an hour to go, and I was just stood there going, and the crowd went mad. Oh no, here we go. You're tired, and then Conrad Smith comes on. You think, oh God, here we go. So, some great times, some great places to play. They're sort of memories you always take.
Oh, that's great to hear. I mean, like, just with the second question, obviously you were selected to play for the Wales U20 side within 2010, and I believe you went to I think it was in the Junior World Championship in Argentina.
That's it, Argentina, yeah.
Yeah. So, just was there ever an opportunity after that, for a Wales call up? Like, was it ever on the table?
Yeah, I had plenty of conversations in my first couple of years. When I was winning Player of the Year trophies, Sports of the Year trophies, it was going really well the first couple of years. What didn't help my cause was at the exact same time as I was playing well and just coming onto the scene, there was also another player in my position called George North. Who turned out to be quite good. So I almost had to wait in the wings a bit there. I think, and I had numerous conversations with them about different tours, and unfortunately injuries hit at the wrong time for me as well. As years go on, it becomes less and less likely, unfortunately, and so that passed me.
Well, okay, that's a great story to hear. I mean, George North's a brilliant player, so it's one of those.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You
can't be too bad about that. But with the third question, just kind of more into like the concussion itself. Like, how did you actually respond to like the concussion you had, and like what was your family's reaction to it as well?
It's quite odd because I think during my career, those years that span my career, we as players and just the general population learned an awful lot about concussion. So when I suffered my first few concussions, we didn't really know what it was or what the long-standing effects of it were, or what actually we were suffering. It was one of those type of injuries where nobody really thought much of it. It got to, at times really early on in my career, talking school times, it was something that was seen to be quite funny. Somebody got like knocked out. Everyone had a bit of a laugh about it, but I think as the years went on, especially the last few years, you've now started to see people take it a lot more seriously, because what we're realizing now, and it's what we wish we had been told earlier on, is that it's not like a knee injury whereby I can go and have it cut open, fixed, and I'm fine again. This can stick with you for the rest of your life, and if anything, get worse. So that's when you start to think towards the end of career, right? What is the actual benefit of me continuing to play if I can't play to the level I used to play at? If it's not going to get better, only going to get worse, why would I still continue to play? And that's sort of things that went through my mind when I finished.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Like that, kind of linking on to that, like obviously you announced your retirement at the end of the 2017-18 season. Like looking back at your, like you've obviously had like many severe head injuries. Obviously, it's not like just one and that was it. You've had a lot. But like, was there ever like one point like in time like where you considered making that decision like earlier? Like were you a bit cautious earlier on?
Yeah, as I started to suffer more and more head injuries, so in my opinion, concussions are like a snowball effect. So the more concussions you get, the easier they are to pick up and the longer they take to recover from. So naturally, it becomes a lot more difficult thing to get over anyway. But yeah, there was a time in about 2014, 2015, where I suffered what I didn't know at the time, I still don't know to this day, what type of or how I got this head injury. I just remember very small parts of that day, and it was a cup final, so it was a big day, quite a memorable experience. And I don't really remember much of it at all. And I remember speaking to the coaches after that and them trying to piece together the puzzle of that day and how I ended up behaving as I did on the pitch, standing in the wrong places, calling the wrong things and all that, and went off at half time. And that took me like 6-7 months to come back from that concussion. And at that time, I actually said to myself, I didn't say it to anyone else, but I said to myself, look, one more of these and I'm done. So I literally put a sort of timer. So look, if I have one more of these head injuries, I'd call it a day. And then actually, I really struggled to come back from that with head injuries. I wasn't getting anywhere. So I said, look, I told the Chiefs, I said, look, I'm going to go back to play for the Dragons. I want to get some game time. I started and played 26 80 minutes in a row that year. Completely off. 26, and I thought, great, this is brilliant. I've got over it now. That long standing time I took out, paid benefits, and I'm all good. So that season finished, and then the pre-season game in the following season, I think it was 2016-2017 season, just a complete accident. I went to hit Josh Navidi, he's running down the wing, his knee comes up, knocks me out, clean, cold. Only thing I remember that day is waking up in the changing room with an oxygen mask on my face, just thinking, oh no, not again. It's sort of realization sinks in. But I remember I said to myself, look, I only give myself one more go and that's it, I'm done. But it's a lot harder when that one head knock comes. Mm-hmm. I took about 7 or 8 months to come back from that one again. I just constant rehab, testing, working with physios and doctors. At this point, we learned a lot more about what it was and the type of symptoms I was suffering. So I made the decision, right, I'll give it another go, as you do. Because I felt I'd taken so long out. I'd spoken to so many specialists. I'd learned so much about it. I thought, right, okay, I'll try and give myself one more go. But I just remember with the games I went back, psychologically, you just can't, you're just not there, unless you can actually give it 100%, rugby's not really the game for you. And back in my mind, I just felt that I wasn't performing or wasn't playing as I wanted to play or used to play. And that's when, again, I suffered another head knock against Ulster away one year. And I walked off that pitch in September 2017. I knew that I'd never play again. Yeah, I knew walking off that pitch, that was it. Which is not the nicest thing to do, especially at 27 years old.
Of course.
You should be in your prime. Yeah, should be in your prime. But yeah, that was it then.
Wow, that's yeah. I mean, it's just that like going for those stages, like the different injuries you've had, and obviously that last one you talked about. Yeah, it's just one of those where as soon as you know it, that's it. It's on the back of your mind. You're just like, wow, like this is like over. Like you can't do much about it. That kind of gets on to like the next question I have, just about like how obviously now, like you, I know that you're now like a financial advisor, as well as you also have your pilot license, I believe, and like how does that go? Because obviously I know like you were obviously interested in becoming a pilot afterwards, but obviously it's been said across other channels, but you can't, like, I think someone let you know that you just weren't able to pursue that kind of opportunity after rugby? Like, what was
Yeah,
your
I know.
reaction to that?
I know medical professionals within that sort of the aviation sector, and they were quite clear. Like, look, your medical records are pretty sort of beefy at the moment. You're not going to get past the sort of first stage, which is fair enough, and I understood that.
Yeah.
So I went on to be an financial advisor, just like my parents are. Something I've always really enjoyed. So I did all my exams when I played, in and out of the head injuries, which wasn't easy. And I've gone on to do that now, and I've now got my own company, being a financial advisor, which I absolutely love. It's a brilliant job for me, going out and meeting people. I'm quite lucky whereby, like some people, and you notice with the older people, I don't suffer with really bad memory lapses, or I don't suffer with forgetting things. For me, what I suffer with is autovestibular type symptoms, which is the movement, balance, coordination, that type of things. If I push my limits too far, that's when my symptoms flare up. I've always got to have in the back of my mind that I took the sensible decision to retire when I did, and that should hopefully save me from the type of symptoms those guys are suffering. And the really sort of downhill, I suppose. I don't know if you've seen Alex Popham's interview, you can see he's noticed quite a big trend of how he's going downhill quite quickly. And that's really sad to see. But you got Alex Popham played well into his 30s. And continue to take these huge knocks. So I've holding the back of my head that, look, yeah, it was really, really tough when I played. I suffered an awful lot when I played, but did I making that sensible decision going to protect me for later on in life?
Yeah, I mean, like you said there, like Alex was a brilliant player, and that's the one thing I like about. I mean, obviously the whole situation and what you were dealt with was obviously unfortunate, but in a way, it kind of like allowed you to kind of like compare to other rugby players who've gone through the same situation, obviously because you're younger than them at that point. So you could say there was kind of a positive from that kind of side. But just adding on just kind of more into the the lawsuit, in a sense, since the introduction of the lawsuit, you can see that social media across all platforms have actually been very positive. I'd say we had a very positive response. Like, what is it? What has been your reaction to it? To it all? Has it all been good? Like, will you maybe use this within the lawsuit itself? Like, what has just been your reaction to it?
Look, it's been brilliant, to be honest with you. Look, you will always, it's social media at the end of the day, that you'll always have people who disagree.
Yeah.
The game's gone soft brigade will always be there and about, so you'll probably never played. And there'll always be people that say, you knew what you're getting yourself into, which, look, yes, I knew what rugby was. I knew the risks. I knew I could go out and I could snap my leg, break my arm, fracture my ribs. So I'm fine with that. That doesn't bother me, because that can be repaired and I can get on with my life. I think what this is all about is that we were constantly put at risk with an injury, which by then could affect us for the entire life. So rugby's only a very small window of what your life actually is. So that small window is going to have a huge effect on the rest of your life. And the whole point of this is, did the people in power, which we believe knew an awful lot more about the dangers and risks of these head injuries, but didn't let us know, didn't let us, the players, the coaches, the medics on the ground floor, know the true risks, whether that was to protect the game, the commercial side of the game, we don't know. But the same year that the NFL lost a court case for $1 billion on the exact same issue.
Exactly.
World Rugby reduced their mandatory sit out of rugby after a head injury from 3 weeks to 6 days at the same time, which allows players to play every week without fail, as long as they pass the midweek tests, which were not difficult at the time, or very technical. So you got to ask questions about that. Look, the scientific backing behind a decision like that is, I can't get my head around it or understand why they would do that. So that's the sort of negligence you're looking at, really. And for us, is look, if there are people in the positions of power who make guidelines, knew an awful lot more about these head injuries and what they let us know, so then we were almost naively putting ourselves at risk because we didn't have the right knowledge at the time. And all we can do is live by the guidelines given to us, because we always led to believe those people above us are there to make the game as safe as possible and look after us. So if they haven't done that to the best of their ability, where does that stand? So, you know, the negligence within that are putting so many people at risk that didn't need to be put at risk. And what we want now is ex-players who have gone through those struggles, is to make sure it never happens to another future generation of players. So look, whatever happened to us has happened. You can't change it. It's unfortunate, but we just want to make sure that we were the first and last group of professional players to have to deal with it. That's the main point of this. You know, that's what it all comes down to. No, we can't. Nothing that World Rugby or any union can do can change what's happened. So, you know, there's no point trying to go back and go over that all the time with them. It's about making sure that they're now aware of the knowledge that's out there, and making sure they protect whoever plays either now or in the future as safe as possible.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. Like, yeah, just totally what you said is on point. And yeah, I totally support what you guys are doing within that case for sure. I mean, like you could say within social media, you could say it's also had a negative effect in the sense where, like, you know, obviously people within social media kind of praise, you know, the big hits within rugby. Like, you know, do you think that's kind of an aspect that will always be part of the game, or do you just think it's kind of, you know, like what is your take on that? Because obviously it's just something that's always been.
Yeah. Look, as players, as fans, we all love the big hits, and we all like putting the big hits in. They feel good and they look good. Look, rugby is as gladiatorial a sport as any. You know, the bigger the hit, the louder the crowd cheers. It's no different to what it was 2,000 years ago. You know, in Rome, there's no different to that. But what we need to do, and I think the unions need to, if anything, make a bit of a proactive step on this, is just don't over glorify those hits.
Yes.
You know, don't take them away from the game, but don't over glorify them. You know, don't slow mo it. Don't overly repeat them. Don't make them a point whereby if a kid is watching it on telly, they think, oh, that's what I want to do. That, you know, that's really good. Or what you could do as well, you flip it on his head. If a parent's watching some bloke on telly get absolutely smashed to a point where he can't get back up, is he really going to want his little kid Freddie to go and play on a Sunday afternoon? I don't think so. Yeah. You know, so you've got to be really careful with it.
Yeah, it's like what you said, that like if someone, you know, if a kid was watching like the whole, you know, a rugby match and that instant was to happen, like obviously parents might just turn off the TV straight away. It's more like, and obviously that just help, you know, the game of rugby. So yeah, I totally understand what you're saying there. I mean, like when you look at like how big of a role, like how big of a role do you think like technology has been, like, you know, like within the world of like concussions, you know, particularly within rugby, because obviously it's kind of changed over time within the last decade, I would say.
There are programs and pilot schemes out there to try and figure out concussions, and I know that saliva test has come out this week. We had the mouth guards as well a few years ago.
Okay,
yeah. You know, they're all trying to find ways of maybe not stopping concussions. So that's another part altogether. But this is all about trying to look after players once they've suffered them concussion. So I don't know if you saw, I think it's England, Ireland. The referee said to Farrell and the doctor, I think, you know, you're off. You've taken a big head knock. You're going off. And Farrell like went mad. He's like, why am I going off? I'm absolutely fine. He argued with both the ref and the doctor, and he ended up staying off because he failed his HIA. So what that proves to you is you cannot leave it in the player's hands, because a player in that position will always try and stay on. So what you got to do is take it out. He clearly had taken a huge knock. You could see it on telly. He clearly failed his HIA, but he was still desperate to stay on. So again, that's another reason why you need independence and as many games as you possibly can to make that decision for players. So yeah, you know, there's two parts of it. It's trying to proactively stop the head knocks from happening, which is why they've been great with the red cards and the referees and the Six Nations. Any sort of out of control contact with the head is now a straight red card, which is great. But then how do we make sure that when players do suffer those head knocks by accident, which will happen, how are they looked after the best possible way? How do we make sure they're fully recovered by the time that they return to that field? Yeah.
Couldn't agree more with what you just said there, and how like technology is really just advanced, but also you have to look after it as well. The World Rugby have obviously introduced like the new HIA protocols. You can say they've kind of developed over time within the last decade. Like it's clear to see that the referees, you could say particularly within this Six Nations, have kind of like had more of a, you could say they've sin-binned more players throughout this whole Six Nations, and it's clear to see that kind of rule is kind of taken place? Like, do you think this is kind of like a positive change in what they've done?
Oh, hugely positive, you know, and without this case launching end of 2020, would this have happened in the recent Six Nations? It might not have. It probably wouldn't have changed. Unfortunately, like anything in life, it's a court case like this. Anything involving money is what make people sit up and actually make note and make changes. But you know, from a referee point of view, it's definitely been positive. As you can see, look, if you go in now uncontrolled and you potentially put somebody's health at risk by smashing them in the head or the face, that's a game-changing decision now on your shoulders, and that's what it needs to be. It can't be something whereby you can literally knock somebody out and I'll go sit aside for 10 minutes. You know, it has to be a game-changing decision now, and something that can hugely affect not just yourself and the team, because that's the only thing that will stop people doing it.
Yeah,
you know, rucks. Yeah, you know, rucks have become inherently dangerous places now, whereby jacklers are so hard to get off the ball that the only sort of way to combat it was to fly in as hard as you can and try and smack them off the ball, you know, which is crazy when you think about it. It's almost like the technique of it's gone. It's just now about power and force. So there's different ways they can tweak that, I think, and potentially referee that. But yeah, regarding the head, I think the sanctions that have been brought in, as much as they might have hurt at the start and will continue to hurt players when they get red carded, they will learn, and it won't take them long to get used to it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's just like, it's a step-by-step process. Like, as soon as it happens, then they'll learn from that, and then hopefully they'll kind of reduce the amount that happens, and hopefully the technique from the players within those players within the Six Nations, but also within lower levels, like you'd say grassroots, learn from that experience. Yeah, just really just the last question, just kind of a more just general one. Just want to get your opinion on, like, obviously, if there was a player that you could play with that you haven't played with within your career, who would it be and why? I'm just very interested to see your take on that.
Player, for me, growing up, when I was sort of that teenage years, when you were playing rugby about 4 or 5 times a week, it was that New Zealand backline of like sort of Carlos Spencer and Joe Rokosoko and those lot. You know, were just literally unbelievable. Even to this day, you look back and you think, how did they pull some of those skills off? You know, it's honestly quite incredible. So yeah, you can just imagine being a centre and having someone like Carlos Spencer as your 10, would just create so much for you. And having players like that, because rugby is all about teammates. But if you don't have quality teammates around you, it makes your job so much more difficult, because as long as 15 people are doing their job right, it opens up so much more gaps on the field. If the forwards are doing the right thing, there's more space for the backs, and as long as the backs do their job, the forwards can do their job. It's very rarely in rugby where one person completely make a team. It is completely a team effort. So there's some amazing teams over the years, which especially as I was growing up with. And those New Zealand teams were just different level back then.
Yeah, Carlos Spencer is he's one of those players who he always changed the game. Like, he always, like, even like my dad, like, he always says that he was his favorite player of growing up, and how he just was able to find gaps within the defense and just get so.
Yeah. Well, you remember when sort of Super Rugby was in its prime.
Yeah.
Back with like the Blues and the stuff that Spencer used to do back then. It was just crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, he was an amazing player. Just, I think, for our generation, I think it's kind of developed over the years. I feel like it's gone from like Carlos Spencer to like John Olamu to like maybe like Brian Habano within that early 2000s, to like maybe having Richie McCall and then Dan Carter.
Yeah.
And I think now we've had players like, you could say, Bowden Barrett, Cheslin Kobe, kind of like Khaleesi, who kind of stepped up to the plate now. So it's just interesting to see how there's different players over time who've kind of come up the rank.
Yeah. And it's like, you look at sort of Carlos Spencer, but in the exact same era, you have Johnny Wilkinson, who was a very different player. He wasn't loose like Carlos Spencer was. He was very, he knew what his role was and he stuck to it, but he was just absolutely incredible at what he did. So, two excellent halves in the same era, but incredibly different players. And you look back now and you realise how good they actually were.
Yeah, those Lions tours were definitely the best of them, because you obviously got to see. I mean, like that Lions tour in 2005, I believe, when it was Dan Carter versus Johnny Wilkinson. That was and then obviously probably, in my opinion, his game of game of his rugby career, just because he was just.
Yeah.
But
yeah, he's awesome. And
yeah, that's kind of it. Just really, I just want to say thank you so much for just taking your time, obviously, to do this interview. Obviously, I know you're a busy person, but yeah, it's just great to have your opinion, obviously, just about rugby in general, but just and really just about concussions, just about how big of a difference and how we really want it to become more well known within around the world, really. So yeah, just thank you so much.
So, no problem.